Hey, what's up guys? This is PUBG on the Xbox One X on the Sony 900E. This was a request from Nick the Man 2, a sub to the channel, that wanted some picture settings for PUBG. He was finding that the image was very dark, and I have to agree with him. The challenge with PUBG is that it has actually pretty good HDR support. The problem is it doesn't have an in-game gamma slider or an in-game HDR slider either. Without that, you're kind of left at whatever brightness the image wants or whatever brightness the game wants. The challenge with that is that in HDR, most of your backlight and other settings like gamma are maxed anyway. So it kind of leaves you to not know what the proper image quality is, and you don't really want to wash out the image either. So you're kind of left with, what the hell do I do? It is a darker image, guys. So really quickly, before I get into the game settings or the video settings, when you go down to picture adjustments on the Sony 900E, you also have game and you also have graphics. Now graphics looks darker because I haven't changed them yet. But graphics is a sharper and brighter image. It doesn't add any input lag. What it does do is it does mess with the local dimming a little bit, so I believe it turns off some of the zones in order to give you a brighter picture. So if you do decide that you want a brighter, sharper image, try graphics. Just know that in some dark scenes, if you're playing a very dark game, you may see some clouding because I believe the local dimming has been altered. So with that said, if you're looking for a brighter image within game mode that doesn't have any input or extra input lag, try graphics. For some games, it is an improvement. For other games that are darker, such as Doom and any other title that's very dark, you will see some brighter edges that you shouldn't see with a full array display. Getting into the picture adjustments, and for those of you that haven't seen any of my picture settings videos before, they are very subjective. It's really what I watch, and there is no right and wrong, guys, when it comes to picture. But here we are with the picture settings for PUBG on the Xbox One X Sony 900E. Brightness will be at max. Brightness is the backlight for Sony displays. It's at max just because it's an HDR title. Color I have at 55, so it's a little bit more saturated. It is a bland looking game in terms of its color. In advanced settings, as I said before, backlight is at max. I like my contrast at 90 or 95. I don't want the white balance clipping. Gamma, I never have this high, but without a gamma slider, if you look at it at 50, or at 0 I should say, this is what it would be with just regular HDR. If you had a gamma slider in game, you probably would push it up a little bit to see the little white box within the black box that you see in some of these games. So this is the only game I do this in, guys. Gamma I will do +2. Black level does create a little bit more. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Black level is actually the brightness in Sony displays. So what you think is brightness in Sony is actually the backlight. What is black level is brightness. This is another setting that I typically have below 50. 50 is, it's 0. Here's its default. I normally have it lower, but for HDR, and for this game anyway, I will go up to between 55 and 60. Each display is different. Go up to 60, don't go any higher, because you will wash out the image. Black adjust, I do like. It does add some depth to the image. It's not a huge difference in HDR, but I do like it. I leave this on high. Advanced contrast enhancer is one of those you see even in Samsung as dynamic contrast. I don't love the effect. This is a very muddy game. It's very ambitious, the game, as far as its open world, its realistic visuals. But if you look, if you go into first person, it's just, the textures aren't great. There's very little aliasing. I'm sorry, there's lots of aliasing, very little anti-aliasing. So the more you push advanced contrast, the more alias the images are going to look. Your foliage and your grass are not going to be sharp. They're going to be fuzzy. So by going it higher with your advanced contrast, you're going to see that more. I like putting it up just a little bit to add a little bit of that brightness. It does add a little bit. Don't go over low. Auto local dimming is your backlight. You want this at high, in my opinion, at all times. Extended dynamic range for HDR should be on high at all times. For non-HDR content, extended dynamic range behaves a lot like advanced contrast enhancer. So if you're watching a 1080p movie that doesn't have HDR and you're seeing grain, that is something I typically will turn off. So extended dynamic range I use for HDR pretty much exclusively. Going back to our color is subjective. I like it at 55. Hue I have at 0. Color temperature for this game I have at neutral. Live color on a lot of HDR games I do put to high. This is a very not a very colorful game, so it looks kind of bland. I do increase it to high. It's not a huge difference, but in non-HDR content, guys, live color is not very accurate, and it can turn reds pink, it can get pretty crazy, so use that sparingly. Oh, really quickly, this setting a lot of people love, smooth gradation. Create smooth gradations to reduce false contours on flat surfaces. Sounds great. The problem I have in games, and I'll see if I can get a closer view of the skybox for you. If you look there, it's on high. Okay, it's off. In my opinion, you see more detail with it off. The problem is when you enhance it, it smooths out the clouds. If you can look in the edges above the castle. Above that castle, medium, low, off. You'll see some of the clouds a little bit more defined. With it high, it smooths it out. The problem is it also adds artifacting. And if you're seeing some, not vertical banding, but horizontal banding, or if you see some, lines across the screen, or it looks like there's some dirty screen effect, in games, try turning it off. With it on, it does smooth things out, but it can create some horizontal lines across the screen in a skybox. So just be mindful of that. For games, I keep it off, but if you're seeing some dirty screen effect, guys, that might be the setting to shut off. In your clarity tab, sharpness I have at 0 or 50. You can increase this to maybe 10. I wouldn't go much higher. Reality creation is an interesting feature. I have it at auto just to sharpen it up a little bit. It's a very blurry game as well. With it off. Manual, I wouldn't go over 30%, so I put it at auto. Smooth gradation I have off. Motion I have off. Those are my settings for PUBG. Guys, HDR, a lot of ways in my opinion, is mismarketed as being brighter and more vibrant. In many ways, it's just color information. And in games, when it makes the image darker, it just makes it hard for you guys to then recalibrate your displays. So try those settings, see how they work. This is again for Nick the Man 2, who made the request. Don't be too hard on PUBG. It's not a great looking game, but it's a huge game. It's just an open world title, multiplayer title, and you really can't expect this game, especially on consoles, to look very good. Also, if you're seeing some blur with the 900E, it really isn't blur here. I'm about to get killed. It really isn't blur. It's just the performance of this game is in the single digits at times. I think it's below 30 FPS at times. It gets even lower. So try those settings. If any of these settings wash the image out, back them up a little bit, but I'd have the gamma up a little higher, the black adjust up a little higher, and see how that works out for you if you find the image to be too dark. Again, smooth gradation, guys. Try turning that one off if you're seeing some dirty screen effect or if you're seeing some horizontal banding. All right, guys, thank you as always, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.